velvet shadows thick and deep. Every secret here is mine to keep. I don't talk, I just nod, they obey. A whisper cuts sharper than a blade. Gold rings on the table, lives in the air. Who holds the power? The man in the chair. He who has the king's ear is king. It's not the crown, it's the voice that sings. Loyalty folds like cards in the wind. He who has the king's ear is king. Smoke curls like ghosts around the light. Deals get signed in the dead of night. I don't need a throne, don't need a name. My word alone sets the world aflame. The dice don't roll unless I say go. The tide don't turn unless I say so. The boss is the shadow, the voice in your fear. The crown don't matter, it's the king's ear. He who has the king's ear is king. It's not the crown, it's the voice that sings.
All right, we are live once again with Louis Kasman on American Made. Hope everyone is doing well. Louis, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Jesse. Good evening. How are you? How's the family?
Everyone's good. Hope you
Good.
are, man.
Yeah,
Ready
thank you.
for another good show.
Ready. I'm ready to go. Ready to go.
All right, man. Let's jump to the comments real quick and give a couple shout outs. A friend of yours, Louis, has joined us, 10 Pale TV.
Hey,
Glad you're
Tin
here.
Pail, I'm glad you're here, brother.
Scott says, good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, what's up, Scott? Glad you're here, bro. Good talking to you.
Michael Hensley, hello, everyone. Glad you're here, man. JJ.
Oh, man, my best friend's back, Jess. JJ, I'm glad you're here, JJ. I miss you, buddy.
John says, hello, Louis. How was your Halloween?
Very good, John. Thank you.
Peter Martino says, hey, Louis.
Hey,
Louis knows.
thank you. Thank you.
Larry says, blessings from Long Island, New York.
Yep.
Michael, hey, guys. Glad you're here. Be sure to hit that like button on the way in. Spanky, good evening, fellas. Let's get to a few more. Golf says hello. G Shippy says, you guys are the real deal. We appreciate that.
So, what's
All
up,
right,
Jess?
Louis. You said you wanted to give a couple shout outs, Louis.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my friend Frankie and his brothers John and Andre. Good guys, good looking out. Thank you for everything. Frankie, get to that gym. And I also want to mention my friend Bryce, who, Jesse, as you know, when you have a sick family member, you rely on others sometimes to help you out.
Right.
And Bryce and his team, his cast staff, they've really taken good care of my mother.
Good.
I really appreciate that, Bryce. Thank you.
Good deal, man. Well, Louis, you and I have been discussing this whole NBA gambling scandal and the illegal poker games that apparently were run by 4 of the 5 families. I know you've been looking into this. You and I spoke earlier about Chauncey Billups, the coach for the Trailblazers, I think. And you mentioned you had read something where he was somewhat the ringleader of these guys and what was going on. We just saw a few minutes ago that Billups has hired a high profile attorney. You want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, Billups, from what I'm told from various people in and out of the matter, both in law enforcement and in the life. This Chauncey Billups, we'll call him Coach Billups. He basically, for again what I'm told, what is the ringleader? He would let everybody know who's playing, who's not playing. Because don't forget, he had a lot of contacts with players and relationships that he developed over the years with guys from other teams. And the mob comes into this through the poker games and through a guy that's making $29 million a year doesn't need a loan for $100,000. Okay. Yeah. He can pay those gambling debts. So the mob is coming in through the Greenwich Village apartment and through Chauncey's relationships. And yeah, so that's how basically that develops. And that's how Angelo Ruggiero Jr. gets into the case. That's how the other families are getting into the case, through that apartment, through the poker games, and through the gambling. And these guys, the addiction is the mob, and the addiction is the gambling. They like to be around wise guys, and they like to be into the gambling. And then Billups is passing the information on: who's sick, who's not playing, who's injured, who's not going to play. And Billups has retained. I believe his name is Mark Mulcahy. Am I saying it right, Jesse?
Macasey. Mark
Macasey.
Macasey. Yep.
Whose father happens to be a former attorney general, I believe, under President Bush.
I think that's right.
President Bush, the father or the son? Which one, Jess? I'm not quite sure.
I think the son, George W. Bush.
George W. So he's the AG, and you're never going to believe the son, who's representing Billups, he did a clerkship in the Eastern District of New York for my favorite judge, Ileo.
Mm.
Yeah. Mulcahy was did a clerkship for Judge Ileo Glasser in the Eastern District of New York. The same Judge Glasser that Jerry Shargell went to Brooklyn Law School to work for.
Mm.
Now, the lawyer representing Billups, Mulcahy, who's a very religious Hasidic Jewish gentleman, he's very close friends with Jerry Shargell's son.
Mm.
So, as they say in the Jewish religion, it's called mashpucha, one big happy family.
Yeah. It seems like they're all tied in some way.
You see how, I wish John, and he always said this, John J. Gotti was a fucking genius. He always said it. Okay. They're all in it together. He says, Louis, calm down. They're all in it together. Okay. And he was right. And I wish he could be here to see how his words are ringing true.
Yeah.
And the shame of it all is they all made it on John Gotti's back. Would anybody know Jerry Shargell if not for John J. Gotti? Nobody. Yeah. Oh, yes, he was a good lawyer. Don't misunderstand me. God was a great lawyer. He could have represented 20 other Italian gentlemen who were in the mob. But if you didn't represent John J. Gotti in that era, you were a fucking nobody. Period. End of story. They're all claim. Listen, everybody in this genre, if you don't talk about John J. Gotti, you're going to have 3 views.
Yep.
All the reporters. If you don't report John J. Gotti, the readership is not great. And John used to say this, Louis, they got to write about me, because if they're not writing about me, they're not selling newspapers. What tie he's wearing, what clothes he's wearing, where he's eating, where he's sleeping, where he's going, it's got to be about John Gotti. And that's why, John Gotti was a legend during his own time. Not Definitely. After his own time, which he is, but during that time, Every mob guy wanted to be like John, dress like John, eat like John. Wherever John went, they had to go. John used to wear gray flannel cologne. Everybody was gray flannel. They must have made $1 million. Nobody wears it anymore. But back in those days, you had, what's John wearing? Oh, he wears gray flannel. Got to wear it.
Yeah.
John, where's he getting his clothes? Well, he gets his ties over here, gets his ties over there. We'll go to Take 6. I used to go to Take 6 to pick up some of his ties. You'd see 20 wise guys pulling up in their black, broken down cars, getting ties, because John was getting ties there. And the Persians that owned the place, they made a fortune in Take 6. So not to get sidetracked. So to get back to the thing, Billups retains Mukasey, and Mukasey happens to know his way around in the Eastern District of New York. He doesn't have any influence anymore in DOJ, unless you're tied into the Trump family or Pam Bondi. You're not getting any headways in the Department of Justice now. But he did retain a good lawyer. If Jerry Shargell was alive, he probably would have retained Jerry Shargell, because Jerry Shargell would, like I said, probably the brightest during that era. Him and Judd Burstein. Judd's still around, but him and Judd were probably the two brains during that time frame. So, right. In my opinion, Billings was definitely the main guy in bringing all the other NBA players around. But Jesse, what's interesting to me is I don't believe that the NBA doesn't know what some of their main players are doing and some of their coaches are doing. I find it hard to believe. I think the NBA. I think the NBA should be an unindicted co-conspirator in this whole fucking thing. Yeah. That's my opinion. Why isn't the NBA an unindicted? I mean, I know Donald wouldn't approve it. He wasn't going after the NBA. The New York Knicks. Donald wasn't going near that with a 10-foot pole. But one of the unindicted co-conspirators should be the NBA. I find it hard to believe, with the private eyes they have on their payroll, with the former FBI agents they employ, with the former NYPD cops they have on their payroll. They have their own confidential informants. You think the FBI is the only people with CIs? No way.
So you think this is that prevalent in the NBA that they would have to be in on it?
Well, I would say 100%. To go back to crooked coach Tim Dougherty, there were seven other coaches. 7 other referees, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
7 other referees that were not indicted in that case. Phil Scala knows all about that. My buddy Phil Scala, the former FBI agent and head of the Gambino squad back in those days. How come they didn't go after those other referees? My opinion, the NBA said, slow it down. You can't indict 8 referees. Yeah. How many games were fixed back then? Fast forward to now. How many other coaches were given information in the NBA? How many other players that are not indicted that were still playing in those games?
Yeah.
Remember, America loves basketball. America loves football, baseball, soccer. So, including agents, including Cash Patel, including Donald. Donald's a big sports guy. Above him, he likes boxing. He loves a lot of sports. So you can't attack the whole profession. So as the government does, they did their pickings. They feel they can get convictions here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense. You mentioned him a minute ago, but I wanted to ask you about Angelo Ruggiero Jr. We did a video the other day, a short that we did that's got a lot of views, and so a lot of people are interested in that situation. He was denied bail, and the reasons that I read were because of prior convictions and witness tampering. You mentioned in the video that we titled it "Sins of the Father," because of who his father was. Have you heard anything else about any of that with him?
Well, with Angelo Jr., they put a $5 million bail package together. And, somebody says, it's a RICO case. It is, as of now, it is not a RICO case. Okay. Does he have, the government alleges he has a history, he had a history of jury tampering or witness intimidation. Okay. That's from a prior case. If he was he convicted of that? I don't know. I don't know. And it's a prior act. And let's say the government's allegation is true, and I don't know it to be true or not, but let's say it's true. If you believe the government, they could monitor your phones. Okay, remember John Gotti. Okay, that's a different matter. Let's just look at Angelo Ruggiero's son as who he is. They allege he's a made member. Okay, they monitor your phones. They put an ankle bracelet on you. You have to hire private security from an independent license and bonding agency that the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office has to approve. Okay, we did this dance already, and that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how long your pre-trial. You can't have anybody at the house except who's on a pre-approved list. And if you break any of these rules and regulations, you're right back in the MDC. And you'll never get bail again, in this case or any other case. This judge, obviously, is, from what I've read, is not too experienced in mafia cases and high-profile cases. So he believes what the government says. I don't know who's representing Angelo Ruggiero. I don't know, but if Bruce was there or Jerry Shagel was there, they would have put up a better fight for him. But yeah, I think the judge could have sent him home, given him bail. It's very hard to fight a case pre-trial, Jesse, especially when you're in a place like the MDC. You're not eating, you're not sleeping. It's a filthy, dirty place. So and the government knows that. So they try and defeat that. Your attorneys come and visit. It's noisy, it's loud, very hard to fight a case. And that's the government's edge. And it's not like when John was fighting his case. It's not like that. Angelo has a small group of people that are around helping him, but he should have got bail. And remember, these judges, they all eat in the same cafeteria. They all do the same thing. There is no way, and I don't care who's watching and who's listening, and I know this to be a fact, U.S. attorneys have private conversations with various judges on their cases. Not in camera. Hey, Judge, how are you? Yeah, it's a tough case, Judge. You got to be careful. You got to be careful. They do it in their own little cute way, but they get their points across. And remember, their paycheck is all from the same cup of soup. It all says U.S. government on it, Jesse. It doesn't say Gerald L. Shargel. It doesn't say law offices of, X, Y, and Z. It all says United States government. They all get the same paycheck, and the judges rely on the United States attorneys and the FBI. And that's just the way it is. The days of Judge Jack B. Weinstein are no longer here. Judge Weinstein was an unbelievable federal judge, Jesse. I don't know if you ever heard of him. The guy was just unbelievable. He didn't take any crap from the government because he knew everything about organized crime. Even Judge Glasser, he knew everything about organized crime. He just was so tainted, and they twisted his head. But believe it or not, before the Gotti case, Judge Glasser was a tough sentencer, but you got a fair ruling in his court. He just became so focused on John Gotti that he became obsessed.
Yeah.
But, highly intellectual judges and the old school judges in the Easton, the U.S. Attorney's Office could not trick them. Now it's a different day. Judge Garifas, Nicholas Garifas, the U.S. Attorney's Office couldn't trick Judge Garifas. No way. And Gleason, Gleason, a scumbag, but U.S. attorneys that appeared before him, they weren't getting over on him because remember, he was the worst motherfucker in that district. So, in terms of being a U.S. attorney, so they weren't fooling him. They couldn't stand up there and say, Judge, we're afraid, witness intimidation. Hold it. I'm the master of that game. You don't have to tell me. I already had my private meetings with Judge Leo, And we used to know because we got information how many times John Gleason would have bump into Leo, So But
Yeah, I think as far as John Gotti, I think a lot of people got caught up in that whole John Gotti
oh yeah.
and just became obsessed, with the whole thing. Until
Well,
some of them until this day.
Jess, the proof is in the pudding. Would you know Gleason before Gotti? No.
Yeah.
Would you know Jamie Orenstein? No. Would you know these? Would you know Phil Scala? Would you know Bruce Mao? Would you know any of these people? They would have just been normal, run-of-the-mill prosecutors or agents. I got to tell you, the one assistant United States attorney, class act. She was the brains in the what do you call it? The Title threes, the wiretap proceedings, the wiretap, all that paperwork was her. Laura Ward. She was putting everybody in the grand jury, but she had no agenda. She wasn't running into ILEO. She wasn't doing any of that stuff. She did her job. Her job was the wiretaps, putting people in the grand. She had me in the grand jury. She isn't the one that moved to indict me. It was that lowlife Gleason. He's the one that moved to indict me. And the proof is he used Orenstein, his flunky, who used to carry his briefcase, and push the carts into the courtroom. Little Lord Fauntleroy used Orenstein to indict me. Not Laura Ward. Okay? Laura Ward was an esteemed, brilliant lady who happened to be an assistant United States attorney whose father, who's now deceased, tough Judge Ward, out of the Southern District of New York. So you see, there's different prosecutors. You had those, and then you had a Laura Ward. Did her job, but brilliant. Whereas Gleason, also brilliant, but just a motherfucker, because see, he had it all planned. He figured, I don't want to be an ordinary U.S. attorney. So how do I do that? On John J. Gotti. If I could convict him, because remember, Gleason was good friends with Diane Giacalone, the last case before Judge Nickerson, who, before he became a federal judge, he was the former Nassau County executive. So that's just giving people a little background on all these different people who no one else in this genre knows any of this, because they had these other, this is RJ with Michael D. Leonardo, and this is this guy, and this is Nadeau, and all these other people. They have no history. They have no background. We used to Scars used to go get him a meatball sandwich. Go get sandwiches, Scars. I used to go like a good boy and get the sandwiches, like a good soldier. So, when I refresh my memory and I think about all these guys that talk shit, when John Gotti was around, you didn't talk no shit. You did as you were told. You stood at attention and you marched. That was the boss, and that's the way it was. So, yeah. So that's what happened back then, Jesse, and Laura Ward today, she's a Manhattan Supreme Court judge. And if you look up her cases, cops come before her, wise guy, all different people. In fact, Joseph Carrazzo had a case before her. And she says, I go back prosecuting his father, this and that. Do you know he didn't make a motion to recuse her? Joseph, the lawyer, Joseph Carrazzo Jr., who's a criminal lawyer and happens to be the late JoJo's son. He says, no, I'm good, Judge Ward. So don't take it from me. Joseph Carrazzo stood before her.
Yeah.
And she disclosed the relationship. So I'll tell you, if I was Billups, I would have hired Joseph Carrazzo to represent me.
Yeah.
Joseph Carrazzo, are you familiar with him, Jess?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Joseph Carrazzo has a big pair. He'll fight for you. He's not a Harvard graduate. He's not a Yale graduate, but you're going to get a fight out of him. And he's not selling you out and nothing like that. He's a fighter and he's come a long way and he knows the law. So Billups and these guys, I don't talk to Joseph anymore, but all I could tell you is back in the day, and it's funny, at the beginning when he was starting his career, he used to write letters to John. He wanted to go see John, and I would never give him permission to go see John. So finally, John says, Lewis, the kid writes me every week. Do you mind, do you mind if let him come up and see me? So I said, you're the boss. If you want him to come and see you, fine. I just, I didn't want to overload you. And Joseph wasn't a lawyer then, but that's how he was, And until the day John died, I could call Joseph on a Thursday. Do me a favor, go see him. John didn't send from. Some people said tonight on a program, somebody brought to my attention, Joseph was bringing messages, doing this and that. That's what the spin is. That's what the Bureau says. That's what the government says. What messages? What was he going to bring message? The man's on a morphine drip for over a year. He's sending messages out. Come on. It's all a bunch of crap. Joseph ran on a moment's notice. And all you wise guys that are listening, that kid ran on a Thursday, left his family, and stood up there till Sunday in Springfield and in Marion to get him out of his door cage, to buy him some food and some clean water on a moment's notice. And half the time he wouldn't take money. I would say, Joseph, take this. I'd only give him a check. Take this. He wouldn't even take it half the time. I'd say, if you don't take it, don't go anymore. So I remember who the good people were and who the vultures were. Anthony Cardinale, a vulture. He was never John's lawyer. He wasn't even an errand boy. He was a flunky, a jerk job. Who else? There was no Bruce went a few times, but John pushed him off. He didn't want to see him anymore. And so that's what that is. But to get back to the NBA thing, Billups hired a very good lawyer, and like I said, it so happens that his dad was the AG under President Bush, so he'll get good representation. We'll see what happens. I think, there's no way Billups is going to trial. No way. So he'll get him a good deal, and not that he has influence, but the last name gives him a little bit of credibility. Do you know what I mean, Jesse?
Right.
He'll have that. His dad was the former AG, so he'll get a little bit more respect.
Right.
And so that'll help him. But I think Billups will play, and I guess time will tell. But in my opinion, Billups was bringing everybody around. And, these guys, I guess Billups was putting the information out. There was definitely an intermediary in between. But the more I read and the more I analyze that indictment, I would say, that's how that's going to play out. So we'll see about that. And Angelo Jr. should have got bail, under those kind of restrictions. No doubt about it. And you don't have to have a job to get bail. Somebody else brought to my attention tonight. I just got a text that I don't know what the name of the show is, Sit Down News or something, says, one of the Lucchese guys didn't get bail, or one of the Bonanno guys didn't get bail. That's not true. You don't need a job. How many wise guys have jobs? And if they're jobs, they're phony jobs. Yeah. So again, all these people, Jesse, you tell the truth, even when I'm not on. You're telling a good show. Proctor tells a good show. You gotta have your cred. If you don't have creds, you just become one of many. Yeah. Am I right?
You're right.
You tell me.
No, you're right.
Me and you don't mix words, Jesse.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And like you said, with this gambling scandal, we'll see how it plays out. To change the subject for a minute, Lewis, I was just thinking about this. I saw something before we got on here. I wanted to get your comment on this race in New York City for mayor with Curtis Lewa, Cuomo, and this Mandami. Have you been following this at all?
I have been following it. I really have. Not that I could ever vote in New York, but I have been following it. Yeah. And Mandami, whatever his name is, he's a socialist. He's crazy. He's a bedbug. Unfortunately, he may win, but you never know. Cuomo, could come from behind, because the Bloombergs, all that whole clique that Michael Bloomberg has, all those billionaires and millionaires, I think they'll jump off their penthouse apartments if this guy gets in. He's crazy. And not that, listen, what Cuomo did during the nursing home scandal was crazy too. And I look at Cuomo and he became an old man. I guess he never should have resigned, first of all, but okay, poor advice. He'd be better off because he is a good administrator and he knows how to govern. They all make mistakes. They're not perfect. Sliwa, it's unfortunately, there'd be no Sliwa if Junior would have finished his job right. Sliwa's a wacko. Would anybody know Curtis Sliwa if he doesn't wear that fucking beret? And John Gotti tried to kill me. I jumped out the cab. I flew out the window, but the window was broken. And Stephen Kaplan, his gun didn't show. Like Sammy, the gun was broke. Would anybody, if he doesn't wear his beret, and his claim to fame is John Gotti Jr. Okay, and John Gotti Jr. never got convicted. No jury convicted him.
Yeah, that's right.
So if Curtis doesn't talk about his beret, and he doesn't talk about John Gotti Jr., would anybody know who Curtis Sliwa is? No one would know him. Again, off Gotti. And then he got caught, I think, misappropriating some Green Beret money. He had a job working for the
Red Beret.
Yeah, Green Beret, Red Beret.
I don't think he was in the Green Berets.
No, I think. Well, if after tonight he's liable to join the Green Berets, but he had a great job working for this John Catt, who owns all those supermarkets in New York City. The guy was paying him $500,000 a year to appear on WABC. He just got fired. So when he loses the mayoral election, what's he going to do for a living? I guess he's going to put that red beret on again. He's not going to roam the subways.
Did you ever run into him or talk with him at all?
Yeah, I met him a few times. And he's as slimy as he looks with his 300 cats he lives with. He lives with cats because all his wives threw him out. He was married to that Katz, the woman who was the district attorney in Queens County. She threw him out too. All these guys are whack jobs, Sometimes, maybe sometimes I go a little bit crazy, but yeah, I mean, these people, again, all on John Gotti's back. John Gotti, if not for John Gotti, he raised more money with him bad-mouthing John and carrying on like an asshole. And then after Junior tried to whack him and they screwed it up, and they really didn't try and whack him, because if Junior really wanted to whack him, let me tell you something. John Gotti Jr. back in those days was a tough guy. He was a tough guy. You didn't mess with John Jr. Okay, so if he really wanted to succeed, he didn't get him the first time, he would have got him again. So, Sliwa, stop flattering yourself. You got to pass, basically. After you lose the election, go back to Staten Island, find a nice rock. Or, you know what, maybe you want to go to Nadu, give Nadu an interview, and go feed your cats. Yeah,
apparently he was on TV today talking about Junior.
Because that Junior, Senior, that's what brings the views. Listen, look at my sister Angel. Would anybody watch that show with all those, I don't know where she finds these people to come on, people like her, my poor sister. Why doesn't she just call the show Angel Show? Nobody will watch it. So she has to throw in her father's name. If she wasn't talking about her father and her brother, my father, my brother, my brother, my father, nobody's going to watch the show. And Jesse, not to flatter me and you, if we're not talking about, but see the difference with us, with me and you, what we talk about, your viewers, they could go to the bank on it. Because listen, you're not getting rich off it, and I get nothing from it. So it's all real.
You're right.
And a lot what Angel says is real. But again, if you're not going to make it the Angel Show, you'll have 4 people talking. We're not delusional. We know that.
Yeah.
but at least we bring truth and accuracy.
Well, I will say, as far as Angel goes, that that's her father, and just
Yeah.
like with you, you were someone that had a very close
But
friendship
he was my
relationship with
father
him.
too.
Right.
He was more of my father than he was to her.
Yeah. But that's in contrast, to these other people that may have bumped into him in prison one time, and they do
Exactly.
shows about it. And,
Yeah.
you know, that is Angel's father. That was
Yeah.
your adopted father. You were very close with him for years. So
Yeah.
there is, it is a difference
There
a
is
little
that
bit.
connection. Yes. But you know what, Jesse? Even with your genre, before me and after me, with a lot of the different shows you do, people you interview, it's all you do it a classy, proper show. Not only without Kasman, you had people on that were, I mean, that were great. That bank robber you had on, that other guy, you had some very, exclusive shows that they don't go on other people's YouTubes. So there's got to be a reason, Jesse. So
Yeah.
that's just, again, it's just what I see, and
Yeah. Well, that's what I've tried to do through these lives that we do, through the videos that I post, is show this relationship that you had with John, and show this truth that you're telling, because we've spoke a lot on here and off of here. And if I thought you were lying about a lot of this stuff, we wouldn't be doing these lives every week.
Mhm.
We may have spoke one time or whatever, but there's a lot there that I think people would be interested in. They, obviously are interested in John Gotti. But there's a big difference between that and a lot of these other people that bumped into him one time on the street and then make a whole channel about it. Or,
Mhm.
there's a big difference in that. There was
Yeah.
a long relationship there.
Yeah. Jess, I want to get back to one thing. In Judge Glasser, in these judges, okay, in all fairness, and I'm going to tell everybody what John Gotti said to me. Even though I had millions of dollars, we had millions of dollars to put up for him. He says, Lewis, don't waste your time. I says, no. Whether it's denied or not, everybody, Frankie Locascio was coming in with big money. Sammy had money to put up. I says, you're the boss. There's no way you're going into that courtroom without money. Okay. And everybody was running for cover. The Liz's, this guy, Junior will tell the story one day. Okay. But not me. And I was a young kid. I made sure we had close to a $10 million package put together. And we could have got more, because I reached out to a lot of the rich friends I had, and people that were willing to sign houses, put up cash, et cetera, including the Liz's, which Allie at the end, we did that. When you work a case like that, think about this indictment: John J. Gotti, Frankie Locascio, Sammy Puke Gravano, and Thomas Gambino. See, I don't know if a lot of your viewers know that. Not even you, Tin Pail. Tommy Gambino was in that indictment. Okay. So think about it. You have four major players, and you have the Gambino guy with his namesake in the case. So I don't care if you had the chief rabbi come in and talk to Judge Ileo. No one was getting bail. And John said, he says, you're all knocking yourselves out because you had to fill out all kinds of forms. When you offer to put up bail, they that's basically how I added myself to the government. The government really didn't know about Kasman that much back then. Yeah, they heard bits and pieces. Because if you notice, on any of John Gotti's recordings, you never hear him bring up Louis Kasman. See,
That's true.
because I was his secret weapon. Never brought me up. Oh, and one recording, he brought up Albie Trimming. He says, I'm the boss. Did you see that, Jesse?
Yeah, we spoke about this the other day, where he was comparing, talking about Castellano, and he's got this business and that business.
That's right. And Frankie, and you got this and you got that. And Sammy, whoever Sammy's, if you don't have it, he's taking it.
Yeah.
Me, I got Albie Trimming, and I'm the boss.
Yeah.
Okay. So out of his own mouth, he had me. I didn't put words in his mouth. And on any tape in Marion or in Springfield, he'll bring up, he always asks for me, and always did. I love him. I miss him. And on the phone calls, because remember, I was getting 99% of all his phone calls from jail, but always made sure never anything, as crazy and as angry he was, never brought up Louis Kasman on those tapes.
Yeah.
So anyone with any intelligence knows why, and you know why.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
just so people know, they may not know, some people, when he does bring up in that recording about Albie trimming, that's you, that's your company. So
correct.
yeah,
That's me and my father-in-law, Albie Cooler, and Robert Cooler. Yeah. That's where he was on our payroll in the place, and he used to come to work, and he got us counts. Jesse, we took a $2 million company and made it, I don't know, by the time it was over, close to $13-14 million a year.
Mm.
And he never said, hey, I'm the boss. I don't give a fuck. Louis, what do we make this month? We made $1 million. Good. We're whacking it up. Never wanted more, never demanded more, nothing.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference, between a Castellano or even a Gravano.
Yeah. And remember, I was fighting against the Lucchese family back in those days. Sidney Lieberman, Jewish guy who was partners with Tommy Gambino in Astro Trucking. Tommy was partners with Sidney in the trucking company. Partners, really partners. Astro Trucking and Tommy Gambino.
Mm.
And so Sidney was very aggressive. So when I got up there, I was the kiss of death for Sidney Lieberman and the Lucchese family, because now they had to split the accounts. And he didn't want to do that. Sidney used to get it all. But now when I got up there in the 80s, 83, 82, now Sidney's party was over. And Tommy's party was over, because Tommy wanted to open up a company like mine.
Yeah.
And him and Sidney were going to go partners. So could you picture that little coffee clutch that morning at 6 o'clock? Well, what are we going to do? There's fucking kids up here now. And he's bringing the boss around. Sidney, there's nothing I could do. There's nothing I could do at all. And Angelo Quack, who I loved, Angelo says to Louis, he says, you got this, Tommy. He said, you think he's blinking before? This guy's blinking and twitching 24/7. Angelo told me that, and Jeannie. He says, you got this Tommy going crazy. I says, good. He had a free ride up here now, him and Uncle Paul. Yeah. Now the party's over. Paul's in front of Sparks. And Tommy, if he doesn't want to be in front of Sparks, he's got to give the boss the real business.
Right.
So, yeah. So, that was the beginning of the Garment Center. Hangar 18, you're right. Mikey Scar's the master splinter, 100%. RJ here with Mikey D. Leonardo. Yeah.
Well, before we move on, Louis, to get into some comments over here, just to stay with Curtis Sliwa a minute, I wanted to ask you, I know there's like a slim to none chance that he becomes mayor, but do you think if he did, do you think he would try to retaliate against the Gambino family? Because
I think he would put NYPD on the Gambino family full time. But see, here's the problem. When you're the mayor of New York, you have to have top security clearance. So the FBI, although Trump could deny it,
yeah,
Trump could tell Pam, this guy, but it's a problem, because when you're the mayor of New York, the most famous and biggest city in the world, he has to have top secret clearance, because every major terrorist attack is focused on New York.
Right.
So this guy's got to meet with the ADIC, the assistant director, and New York has an ADIC. Very few cities have an assistant director. They have an SAC. New York has an ADIC. So it's going to be a big problem for New York, because there's no way you want this guy having top secret clearance. No way. It would be a big problem. And I think if Jessica stays as the PC in New York, there's no way she would work for Sliwa. I don't see her working for Sliwa. I think as a favor to Bloomberg and her father, you got to remember that Jessica Tisch, the police commissioner in New York City, her dad is the Tisch family. Her dad owns part of the Giants football team, plus Tisch Realty. Her family, they're multi-billionaires. They're in the same league as Bloomberg.
Right.
So, Tisch, all those billionaires, they all hang out together. So whether they talk about each other is one thing, but at the end of the day, they're all in it together. So I think Slee was going to be a big problem.
Did John ever say anything? CB Punisher wants to know if John ever said anything or felt a certain way after Slee was shot.
John Sr. or Jr.?
I guess Senior. Did he feel?
Well,
how did he
I'm
feel?
Sure. I wasn't there, but knowing being in John's head, I would say John must have said, "Hey, son, you messed up this hit."
So you don't think it came from Senior? You think this was Junior on his own?
Well, listen, Senior wasn't happy about Slee were constantly talking bad about the family.
Yeah.
But Junior back then would do anything to please his father or get a rise out of his father. So I wasn't privy to Senior saying to Junior, put Slee's beret in his mouth. No, I wasn't privy to that. But I don't think John would have been that upset if it would have been on the front page of the Post, or a picture of Slee on the subway with his beret in his mouth. I don't think that would have bothered. Would it have been a red beret or a green beret? A red beret. Yeah, I don't think Senior would have been upset about that. But hey, listen, there were some reporters that used to report bad about John. This one guy, Mike McAlery. Mike McAlery was a terrible reporter, and he had a personal animus towards John. And Mikey Scars was sent to reprimand him, and Mikey Scars did reprimand him. Mikey Scars was in a restaurant one night, and it was by accident. He didn't fulfill John's order right away. They were in a restaurant, a fancy restaurant, and Scars saw him there. And he waited for McAlery to go into the men's room. And while Mike McAlery was peeing and had his thing in his hand, he went up behind him and says, "Mike, tone it down. Otherwise you're not going to be able to hold your thing anymore. The next time I have to see you, it's going to be in your mouth." McAlery never wrote a bad story anymore. And I'm sure Scars will attest to that. Because, that was an assignment that was given to Mikey Scars. Neutralize this guy nicely the first time. Nicely. And he did. He did a good job, Scars.
Gotcha. Hanger 18 says, isn't Glasser still on the bench?
I believe he has senior status at 100 years old. But he's not going to give up that paycheck. Yeah,
he says, 101 years old.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate the correction. I was 1 year off. He might be an alien. He might go to 200. Who knows with this guy?
He also adds, Glasser denied Frank Lacasio's release. Leo should retire at 101 years old. Sheesh. Yeah,
well, if you go before any federal judge, doesn't have to be Leo, any federal judge, and the indictment reads like it read back then, you're going to get bail denied. It's automatic. Like John says, what are we wasting our time? It's denied. So, yeah. So in that respect, it would have been any judge.
Let's see what we got here in the comments. Jody says, Jesse, let Lewis continue to be unfiltered.
He never stops me.
That's right.
He never stops me. Hanger 18, Cardinelli's a jerk off. Yep. We're going to do only a 5-minute show on him one time about Anthony Cardinelli from Boston. He wasn't even a good errand boy. He used to fuck that up too.
Jody also says, nobody would watch Angel Gotti, Lewis. She doesn't know anything credible about the life.
You're correct, Jody. She really doesn't. But I will say this about Angel. I would call Angel. I would find out, what the mood was for the day. She was good at that. That I would have to say. She always gave me good info. Before I would make my morning call, I would usually call her. Yo, what's up? What am I in for today? So she would always, when she knew, she would always give me a heads up. Or if I knew he was twisted, I would make her send the kids over. Like if I knew he had a bad night.
Yeah. Scott says, really good show tonight.
Thanks, Scott. You
I'm
like it,
glad
Scott?
you're here.
Be objective, Scott.
Be sure to hit that like button too. Subscribe to the channel.
Remind everybody, hit that like button and subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah, I get caught up in the conversation, Lewis, listening to you. And
no, I know, Jess, but you're almost at 16,000 already, Jess.
Almost.
We'll get there.
Lewis is talking real.
Hey, Jess, let me read this to you. Anyone that thinks Sammy's theory of John saying he needed to take the fall is such a lie. John knew he was dead to right on those tapes. Yeah. Jess, read it.
Anyone that thinks Sammy's theory of John saying he needed to take the fall is such a lie. John knew he dead to right on those tapes. They had him dead to rights on those tapes. He's confessing to 3 murders. He knew he was going to do life. What's your thoughts on that?
Hey, Joe, you're right to a point. The tapes were bad. I'm not going to say they weren't. However, if Sammy Puke doesn't cooperate, isn't outed, because he was given information long before he was outed. Don't be fooled that he wasn't. If Puke doesn't cooperate, the fight is better. The fight is better. And remember, that one lady juror who Gleason planted a newspaper in her pocketbook. Okay. When I say Gleason, the government, their agents, okay, the FBI, that woman was pro-John. So I'm not saying she would have stayed pro-John or whatever, and there was no jury tampering, all right? But that one juror was definitely pro-John. So maybe we would have had a hung jury, okay? So we don't know that. That's just my proposition, my thought on that. But like I said, we're going to have Susan Van Dusen on one time, Jesse. She was one of John's lawyers, and she was Albert Krieger's partner. And me and Susan reconnected. And yeah, so we're going to have her on. And she made me aware of so much stuff that was going on that I forgot or I wasn't aware of. Because remember, Gleason kept me out of the courtroom with that phony subpoena.
Yeah.
And she reminded me of that juror. That
would be really interesting to speak with her, to have you and her.
Yeah, we're going to have her on. Me, you, and Susan. She brought a lot of stuff. She reminded me, and John was she was in John's confidence. They would talk a lot, just one-on-one. John liked her a lot.
Axel Rose says, "What made John great was because he wasn't greedy."
100%. Man was the man would have been worth 300 million if he wasn't greedy. If he wasn't so generous.
Jody says, "Lewis, don't even mention Sammy's name."
Yeah. I don't. I call him Puke. Everybody
right.
knows what Louis Kasman calls puke. Puke is puke.
Yeah. Axel also says, "Scars put 80 men away. He's not a good guy. It's a ruse."
Axel Rose, you know what? I'm glad you said it. He is faking out this whole genre. Him and RJ, they're faking out this whole genre. Let me just say this, though. Scars was in the life. He was 100%. John Sr. liked him. No doubt about it. Does he embellish? Does he make himself more important? Yes. He was put, after the fact, he was put to assist Junior. He did, but he assisted himself, which I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Not at all. However, much of what he says is grossly exaggerated and or manufactured. But he has the creds by being a made member, and we go from there. But he was never in John Sr.'s strict confidence in the life or on a personal level. But John did like him. And John Sr. used him, no doubt, used him to assist his son in running the family. But make no mistake, Scars was running nothing. Junior was running everything. Junior had his mother's brain. Junior did not have his father's brain. Mrs. G is a very smart lady. Very smart lady. Vicky, John's daughter, has his brain. And Peter, young Peter, as I call him, is as tough or tougher as Junior and has his father's mind and his father's compassion and his father's understanding. See, John J. Gotti was not a bully and always went for the underdog, unlike Puke and others who, if he knew you were an underdog, he attacked, he lunged. All these wise guys, they love an underdog, not John Gotti or John A. Gotti. Daddy took after his father with that respect. If you were an underdog, he protected you, he helped you. And maybe back then I was a bit of an underdog because I wasn't in the life, but for an underdog, I became top dog, just like your song. Remember, when you have the king's ear, you have all the fucking power in the world, And some of the messages I would give, maybe I made them up. But a lot of stuff that John wanted to do, because he had that whole proud thing going on, and he had that whole, he didn't want to ask. He wanted it to be automatic from these wise guys and these captains. So never once was I ever reprimanded Jesse. In all the years, if I would go to any of his men, never once. And you believe me, a lot of what I said to them, what were they going to do? Were they going to check with John?
Yeah.
Was Tommy Gambino going to say, hey, boss, Lewis came to see me today. He wants me to give him 100% of this account or this trucking company or this unit. You think Tommy Gambino was going to go check with him? No fucking way.
Right.
And sometimes I would say to Tommy, go check with the boss.
Yeah.
A little blink, a little twitch. He wasn't checking with the boss. But I covered my base because you never know. I always said, I don't want to be like these other people. So whatever I did, I always made sure that Pop's got a piece of the action and his right share as a boss, not like other of these captains. Like Junior would say to them or other people, I would tell them, just make sure it's the same envelope as Paul. Make sure it's the same envelope you were given Uncle Paul, or step it up. He knew you weren't fooling anybody. Jimmy's and Tommy's and Charlie's and Frankie's and Leprechauns. You knew to give that envelope. You knew. Otherwise, we were going to have we would have a garbage route. I'd ask for the garbage route.
Yeah.
Like the one on Long Island, Jamaica Rash. They weren't around, John. But our captain, who was handling garbage, his name escapes me. It'll come back. I don't know if it was Jimmy Brown or whatever. Somebody that was very close to me, Jamaica Rash, $650,000. And he refused to pick up the garbage. So very nicely, I said, one night I was at the Raven night. I said, that's a very good friend of it. It happened to be Mel White, who owned Food Town Stores, it was called Food Town Stores on Long Island. He owed Jamaica Rash $650,000, and he couldn't pay him. He was going bankrupt, Mel. So Mel called me. No problem. So I happened to know the owners of Jamaica. I said, you got to keep picking this guy up, So I had to get, the garbage guy involved, the captain who was handling garbage. And it so happens that, see what happens when you're not greedy? And John improved it. Lewis wants Mel picked up. You keep picking Mel up. Stop and Shop buys out Food Town stores for $250 million 8 months later. You know who the first guy Mel White's paid off was?
Who's that?
Jamaica Ash. Okay? So it's ironic. See, now Sammy, he would have squeezed him. Sammy would have said, give me a supermarket. Puke. John says, no. And after he got paid off, Mel says, Lewis, I want to do something for John. So I go back to John. I says, Lewis, I don't want nothing from him. You did a favor for the guy. He made his millions, but Mel did do something, which doesn't matter. Mel's dead. John's dead. Mel White's did do the right thing. That's just one story. Phil Basile owed Jamaica Ash $150,000, but Phil Basile owed me 7 figures. So Jamaica didn't want to pick up any more of Phil's garbage. So that was another meeting. And the $150,000, I knocked it down with Jamaica with their permission for $50,000. Once I was able to cure, Phil was gone at the time. And once we were able to cure the problems on all the nightclubs. Not the Lucchese family, the Gambino family saved Phil Basile's life. The Lucchese family was bleeding Phil Basile, destroying Phil Basile. They wrecked him. Once Paul Vario passed away, because Paul Vario and Phil were very, very close, like John and I. Once Vario died, Jess, the vultures, those Lucchese's came out and they wrecked Phil Basile.
Yeah.
Wrecked him, sucked him dry. Joe Caridi, Johnny Sideburns, Tommy Meep, all these guys. Panisi was in on it too. They destroyed Phil. But, and John wasn't a fan of Phil, like I've said to you before. But, these are just some stories that, interagency problems, Jess, as John used to call them. He says, Lewis, you bring me all these interagency problems.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, that was his sense of humor.
Hanger 18 says, Lewis, have you ever watched the Charlie Rose episode with Al Krieger?
I did watch it, but I have to watch it again.
He says Charlie Rose brought up that Krieger wasn't effective in cross-examining Gravano. Bruce would have destroyed him.
I agree, Hanger. Krieger was not effective on the cross, and that just goes to my words to everybody. Why do you think the government had to destroy Bruce Cutler? So, again, Jesse and Kasman, our words ring true. That's why they had to wreck Cutler. That's why Gleason had to go after Cutler, because one of Sammy's fears, besides being outed with his brother-in-law, was he didn't want Bruce cross-examining him. Thank you for that.
Jeff Stevens says, that's funny. John takes a shit at 7 p.m. All the guys take a 7 o'clock shit.
You're right, Jeff. We used to go out to dinner, and if John would order shit, 8 guys at the table, I'll have all 8 order in the same dish. Well, what kind of wine you want with that order? Oh, yeah, I'll have the same wine. What do you want for dessert? Yeah, I'll have the same. How much? Everybody waited till the boss ordered. Yeah. Very true.
John Amato says, it's crazy to me that Scars is even getting the attention he gets, that he was this powerful captain.
I couldn't agree more, John Amato. Right on the money. Right on the money. But you sell, after a while you believe your own lies. And after a while, some of the people in this genre, that's what they want to hear. And that's what they believe. That's why Jesse brings a new perspective to you people on American Made. Make sure you subscribe and donate to this channel and like.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, nothing against Scars or anyone, but they have that, they were a made man in the Gambino family. So people hear that and immediately elevate them. When they hear, Louis Kasman, he wasn't a wise guy. He wasn't in the mob, but you were there. You were closer than any one of these guys to John.
And remember, Jesse, and I'll quote John, Louis, you have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Quote John J. Gotti. Okay. Mikey Scars wasn't. Mikey Scars was at his house once or twice. That I will say. But Mikey didn't wake him up. Mikey didn't have a personal relationship with him at all on any level. He ate with him, wise guys. I ate with him in his home. I ate with him with his family because we were family. And that breaks my heart. Okay. But yes, that's true. There was no scars there with me, Junior, Vicky, Angel, some Vicky's kids and Angel's kids were there, and Mrs. G was there. That was my family.
Yeah. Detroit Ziggy says, who clipped Mikey Scars' brother? You know anything about that, Lewis?
Detroit, you're best served for me to answer that question. You're better off, the next program this is RJ with Mikey DeLeonardo. He'll give you the best answer. Why? I could give you the answer, but let it come from him. I don't, that's his brother. Do I do a good imitation of RJ, Jess?
It's pretty spot on, Lewis. I have to say.
I left out the Roger. This is RJ Rod. Hey, Jess, where's JJ?
I don't know. I don't know if he's still.
Come on, JJ. Where are you, brother? Are those cockroaches getting you? Or did the ghost eat you up? Jess, maybe one of these days we got to give JJ a little action on his show. We got to help him out. He only gets 4 viewers. I think he's got 6 subscribers. But he's a good guy.
He's a good guy. I like
JJ, you just keep mentioning my name and John's name, and you're going to get views. You're going to get views, my brother. Just, keep it up.
Leonard says, awesome show, guys.
Thank you. Bruce Cutler had a song about Judge Glasser.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Bruce and I in the office. In fact, once in a while, Bruce and I would sing it on the phone to John when he would call Bruce's office. Yeah. But I'm not going to do that tonight. But
you're not going to do it?
No, on another night I'm going to sing the Bruce Cutler Louis Kasman song about Judge Glasser.
I'm definitely going to have to make a note of that, Lewis, to bring that up. Yeah,
I want you to make a note of that. In the background, I want, maybe you'll have that music in the background without just the music on All the Bosses Men while I'm singing the song about Judge Glasser. Judge Glasser, Judge Glasser. Bruce and I used to sing it on the phone. He's a good guy, Bruce. I miss him.
Common Sense says Gotti sat in prison on a recorded call and visits saying it took 50 lion rats who killed 100 people to put me in prison. No, it didn't. It took a tape recorder and a wire in an apartment. He handed it to them.
Well, that was the beginning. And then Puke put the finishing touches on. But at least we would have had a good fight. John always said, all I want is a good tuna fish sandwich and a good fight. He used to say that, Lewis, just get me a good tuna fish sandwich. And when I used to go visit John after he passed, on 2 occasions, I used to bring a tuna fish sandwich. And I'd sit on the bench and I'd eat that tuna fish sandwich. Because when he would come to work, don't bring me a corned beef sandwich. Don't bring me a pastrami sandwich. Don't bring me a brisket sandwich. Just bring me a good tuna fish sandwich.
Yeah.
It was just, he had so many of these quirky things. That's what I loved about him.
I remember you said you couldn't get him one in jail in your sock because it would smell.
It would smell, and I'd have to wrap it in tinfoil. The saran wrap, because I tested it.
But then it would go off, wouldn't it?
No, what I would do is I put it in tinfoil. Well, tinfoil would set the metal detector off because they would wand you back then. Yeah. But I would make Jackie. I'd say, Jackie, come here and smell my leg. Do you smell the tuna fish? And he'd say, yeah, we can't go in with the tuna fish. Because he would smell my leg. I would smell his. I no, Jack, forget the tuna fish. Throw it out. Because we used to get prepped in the car. We had the black socks on. On Wednesdays was food day. So Jackie would wear his black socks. I'd wear my black socks, and we'd load up. I says, forget the tuna fish, Jack, because we would stink. And you, like I said, you go in that packed elevator, and other things would stink. So between the tuna fish and the other things, I said, no, let's just pass on the tuna fish. Go with the veal cutlets and the eggplant. Funny days.
Yeah, it is. Detroit Ziggy says Carmine Agnello is still operating those scrapyards today in Cleveland under the Gambino flag.
Well, what would you want him to operate under? And he has a right to operate under the Gambino flag. He has three sons with John's daughter, and he was always a good earner. Carmine Agnello took care of that family pretty good.
Yeah.
Built them a multi-million-dollar home. Vicky raised 3 beautiful children. Those kids are good kids. Listen, nobody's perfect. Okay, nobody's perfect. But Carmine financially did a great job. He was a good provider.
Yeah.
And you hear John on the tapes, saying it,
Yeah.
He said to Vicky, Carmine, he may not be a brilliant guy, but he's a good earner, and he's a tough guy.
Here's an interesting comment, Lewis. Jeff Stevens says, "Man, Lewis, I always had sort of a naive belief that these prosecutors had an inherent integrity about them, but you have really opened my eyes here."
Yeah, back in those days, like I said, very few, and I might be generalizing, but unfortunately I came to know a lot of them even before they targeted me. No integrity, no morals, no scruples, nothing, zero. It was just, and the proof is here. Greg Andres, Andrew, look at this Andrew Weissman. Donald Trump hates his fucking guts, and rightfully so. I hate his fucking guts. They all make their money, they make their bones on famous people, be it infamous or famous. That's how they make their bones. All these prosecutors and all these judges. At least Kash Patel, the new director of the FBI, at least you get where he's coming from. He doesn't get up there like a mafia guy. Oh, he doesn't even know how to say the names of the families. La Casa Nostra, Lucchese's.
Yeah.
He's not tuned into this mafia shit. Back in those days, you had Fox, you had all these guys, John Gotti, Frank Locascio, the Gambino organized crime family, La Cosa Nostra, not La Casa Nostra. So Patel doesn't have an agenda. He's just doing his thing. Whatever the boss tells him to do, that's what he's doing. We all know Donald loves this mafia stuff. We all know that. He tries to operate like a mob boss, which I think is nice. I like it. He tells these guys, you fuck with me, I'm going to bomb your boats. Then he calls up, what's his name there? Who's the Secretary of War? Yo, go in the Caribbean. I want to bomb out some boats tonight.
Yeah.
Who's better than him? He launches a couple of missiles and Congress goes crazy. You can't do that. Relax, I'm doing it. Hey, Hexteth, I want those boats bombed. I love it.
Yeah, he tells him, point blank, unlike any other president, he says, if these boats bring drugs in our country, we're going to kill them. We're going to blow them up. They're going to be dead.
You know what? I love that. Trump's got balls. That's all I could say. Fuck Congress and fuck the Senate. You're bringing drugs into this country, I'm blowing you to smithereens. Yep, love it. Keep bombing, Donald.
Common sense says we have to agree to disagree. He wasn't getting acquitted in that case, regardless if Gravano flips. He was on tape talking about murders he ordered and others he gave permission for that were done.
Common sense. I'm going to make a statement so everybody gets this. Bruce Cutler gets disqualified and gets indicted. Can't practice. Judge I. Leo issues an order, local rule 8. Don't talk to the press, don't talk to the media. But the government leaks stuff to the media, okay? And I was leaking stuff to the media, but not Bruce. When Bruce does go and says something about Glasser, they call him in, they hold him in contempt, okay? Jerry Shargel's disqualified. Gravano is cooperating on the down low, in my opinion. And then all of a sudden, while they're pre-trial, John, Frankie, and Puke, now we have no lawyers. We have a hearing. And Glasser gives us 3 weeks to get lawyers. When I say us, it's because I was responsible for getting counsel for the boss and helping Frankie. Sammy, he was doing his own thing. But Sammy wasn't doing anything without the boss's permission. So, I mean, I interviewed, I want to say for low, 20 lawyers. White shoe guys out of Washington, Brendan Sullivan, who represented the guy in the Iran-Contra. I mean, I went, F. Lee Bailey, I mean, the most prominent lawyers, and sent them in to the MCC. John didn't want to meet with any of them. F. Lee Bailey came in drunk, wearing high-heeled shoes because he was short, so he used to wear elevated shoes. John says, "What'd you send me here?" He called me up. He went crazy. What did you send me? What happened? I sent Jeff Lee Bailey. You said, John McNally recommended him. Joe Watts recommended him. What was the problem? He says, "Lewis, the guy was drunk." I said, "John, I didn't know he was drunk." Yeah. So we went through a lot of lawyers, and now we're down to the wire. And we bring Card Allen for Frankie Lowe, just on the down low. Then we get John Mitchell, bright guy, out of the same suite as Bruce. And I have a couple other paper pushes behind the scenes. But we needed a front guy. So Jimmy LaRosa comes to me and says, "I want you to let this guy go in and see John, Albert Krieger, out of Florida. He represented Joe Bonanno. He has a pretty good reputation." I looked him up. I said, "But Jimmy, he represents a lot of drug pushers." I said, "John's not going to like that." So I go see John. I said, "Here's this." I had a resume. I says, "Here's the resume on Krieger." He says, "Lewis, what do you think of him?" I says, "John, I sent in about 15 lawyers so far to see you." I says, "And you didn't like any of them." And I says, "To be quite honest, frankly, I didn't like any of them." I said, "I'll keep looking." I said, "But talk to this guy Krieger and see what you think." He represented, we used to call him Mr. Big. He represented Joe Bonanno. He's got some good wins. He's highly, highly regarded on both the defense bar and by U.S. attorneys and by judges. He's very respected. Krieger was highly, highly respected. Head of the National Criminal Defense Association. Very, 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 and well-spoken. But we got Krieger. He was an old man. Okay. John meets him, and he likes him. I said, "All right, let's not do anything. I want to send in 2 or 3 more guys." And I'm working the phones, and I send in some more people. I send in this guy from Texas, comes in wearing a cowboy hat. I said, "Listen,
Yeah. I remember you telling me that, man. That would be crazy to
wait,
look
he's
back
wearing a cowboy hat
to
and
look
a
back at
suede.
the tapes and see
Yeah.
John represented by a guy with a big cowboy hat on.
Wait, big cowboy hat. I forget his name. And he had one of those suede jackets on with the tassels. I said to him, I said, "Listen, you can't go in and see this man dressed like this. And cowboy boots on, Jesse." But John liked him. I said to him, I said, "The only way we can move forward with you," and he was smart and he was good, "you can't wear your cowboy hat to work. You can't come to work." And I said, "The next thing you're going to know is I'm going to have to send you a car in a horse-drawn buggy." I said, "You can't do it." So it wasn't a good mix. We would have wound up firing him. It wasn't a good mix. And, as time went by, I said, "John, I think we got to go with Krieger." I says, "Jimmy LaRosa, as long as we keep it." He said, with Jimmy, I said, "Listen, you can't have Jimmy up front." I said, "But Jimmy is doing some good stuff for us. And you said he could still get the $15,000 a month from Bobby Rubino's. You won't have Phil Castellano stop that. Let Jimmy just keep getting his check, and Jimmy will help us behind the scenes." And Jimmy did a lot of work for us behind the scenes and gave a lot of good advice. And on 4 occasions, I made Jimmy go in and see John, and he was good. Maybe people might say, "Well, it wasn't he being a hypocrite. He was Paul's lawyer," but Jimmy was a good lawyer. Okay. So we went with Krieger, and yes, somebody in the chat says he was bad. He was bad. We got him at the end. He was bright. He was a good cross-examination guy, but it was overwhelming. Krieger never had a case as big as this, Jesse, in defense of Krieger.
Yeah.
And the government threw everything at him. So he tried to become friends with Leo, and it really didn't work. Ileo used him, and he used Ileo. They go into chambers together, Krieger and him. We got a couple of good rulings. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. Somebody in the chat says it was tough back then. But if Puke doesn't flip, I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe that one juror would have stood up, or maybe somebody would have got to one of the jurors. I don't know that, but we'll never know that because John's dead. Everybody gets convicted, but who knows? Who knows?
That's right.
Does that make sense, Jesse?
It makes sense.
Oh.
Well, Lewis, we've been going about an hour and 21 minutes. We've got somewhere around 110 people watching us. A lot of good comments. Do you see anything else you want to get to before
I'm just looking. Anything come to mind, Jess?
Jeff says Jesse is a really, really fine host. 100%. I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
You are a good host. Just look. Here's one, Trent. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you from Trent. Also, he says should have got Eddie Jacobs, Merlino's attorney. Do you know anything about him, Eddie Jacobs?
Yeah, we spoke with Eddie Jacobs. John didn't care for him.
Which one did you want to?
Here's one about Lewis. Did you interview Matthew Mara as possible counsel? No, he wasn't big enough for John, and he wasn't big enough. Matthew Mara back then was on the periphery of representing Mafia guys.
Yeah, he's done some videos on YouTube and stuff, I think.
Yeah. So you never see Judd Burstein doing it, and Judd Burstein, he represents a lot of boxes now. His mother was a Nassau County Supreme Court judge, and Judd Burstein used to work for Jerry Shargell. So back then, who used to write a lot of Judge Burstein's appeals and work? I mean, Jerry Shargell's work? Judd Burstein. Yeah. If you need a lawyer, my opinion, I like Joseph Carrazzo. I like Judd Burstein for paper and for courtroom, and Jerry Shargell. I was never impressed with Hoffman or Pollack. They just loved the money and loved to say they were representing John Gotti.
Yeah. To go back to what we were discussing at the very beginning, Detroit Ziggy says more indictments are coming regarding the NBA gambling scandal. Superseding indictment coming for the rest of the New Jersey faction.
Yeah, I agree, Detroit. I think there's more coming, and I think you're going to see more professional ball players. I think you may see another coach. This is not limited. I think this is widespread. I think the FBI is doing their due diligence. And I think you got a couple of down low cooperators that are, remember, the FBI can't do this case without cooperators. No way is it happening. No way.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, Jess? There's no way they could go on. Because listen, if this Billings is not going to jail. Okay. He's going to Billups. He's got to flip or make a sweet deal, one or the other. And then what's going to happen to the other players? What's going to happen to that Rosie? What's going to happen to the other guy? What are they going to just put? Are they going to put Angelo Jr. in jail? No way. Well, let me tell you, if it comes down to that, then you know the NBA is getting yet another pass.
Yeah.
If the Mafia guys are the only guys that get convicted here, then the NBA is getting their second pass that we know of. The Doggety one, the referee pass was the first pass, and now they're going to get their second pass, if that happens.
Right. Yeah, I agree, Lewis. We'll have to keep an eye on it. You got anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I think listen, like I always say, Jess.
Anthony Aralotta, Money, Mayhem, and the Mafia. Great show, fellas. Anthony, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. And I look forward to seeing you. And I'm glad you tuned in. I know you're busy. And I know you have a lot of respect for Jesse. I like that. So, listen, Jesse and I were just trying to, it's my perspective. Jesse lets me go. And, I try and answer everybody's questions. I don't really care who agrees with me, who doesn't care who agrees with me. But I was there, and I had the boss's ear. Not Mikey Scars, Louis Kasman. I had the boss's ear, and I had Junior's ear, and I had Junior's back. So we got a lot to talk about. This is one of, I can't tell you how many more. So make sure you click the like button, subscribe, and take it away, Jess.
All right, Louis. Like you said, I look forward to upcoming shows that we're going to do. And once again, I appreciate you doing this with me, man. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, so have I. And I made the right choice, and you made the right choice. I'm glad I'm here.
I think so. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching this. We look forward to doing the show next Sunday. Hope you all can join us. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and keep following American Made with Louis Kasman.